In this video, I'm in the process of replacing some electrolytic capacitors in this KW1000 linear amplifiers. I just want to go through some of the issues I had with the electrolytics that I purchased online. Now, this particular amplifier had 6 of these 100 microfarad 450 volt capacitors. They're original and probably around about 40 years old, so it was time to replace them with some new ones. So first off, I purchased some 450 volt 470 mic electrolytics. The intention is to use 6 of them, and that would give me enough capacitance and sufficient voltage rating for the around 2400 volts that the linear actually uses. The circuit is a voltage doubler, 3 capacitors and then 3 more in series. So I purchased 8 of these capacitors at reasonably expensive, about $4 each. And one of the first things I noticed was this particular one had a dent in it, and so did a few of the others, so I thought I better test them. I found on my capacitance meter, instead of 470 microfarads, they came up to 264 microfarads. I did measure the ESR, and I found it wasn't too bad. This one here is 0.14, which is okay for that type of capacitor. But I found the whole lot measured around 270 microfarad, and yet they're marked 470. Someone's gone and put a 470 microfarad sleeve over the capacitor. I tried to reform them, and I couldn't get over around 270 microfarads using the slow reforming process, so they were definitely wrong. I did get my money back, so I then ordered some more. So this time I ordered some 220 mic. Now, I'd already rebuilt one linear with 220 mic, and I used 400 volt ones, and I needed 8, so I thought I'll buy the 450 volt ones, 220 mic. I measured them, and they're not too bad, 183, and they can be up to plus or minus 20% out. The ESR wasn't bad, so I got 6 of those to put into the linear amplifier. So they were all mounted on a circuit board. This is the circuit board, which takes 6 capacitors. They were put into the linear, and in this linear you'll notice there's a resistor here. That resistor goes to one side of the high tension transformer. This is a 27k, and with a second resistor also in series, it goes to something like 50k. With the 50k, the voltage across the capacitors is around about 184 volts, about 180 volts. And what you should really do with capacitors you don't know much about, particularly if they've been lying around a long time, is try to reform the insulated layer. And to do that, you bring the voltage up a little bit more slower than the rated voltage and gradually work your way up. So I did that, and I found I couldn't get above about 200 volts, even though they were marked 450. And what happened when I got to 200? This one blew its top off. Another one started to get hot. So they marked 450, couldn't get over 200 volts. Now the interesting thing is, I did have some old Nippon electrolytics, and these ones I bought on eBay are also Nippon, as you can see here. It says Nippon, Japanese. But I did have some old Nippons I bought many years ago, 400 volt 220. That's these. Now the important thing is there's a bit of difference between the original Japanese and these eBay Nippons. First thing you notice, not very important, is but the negative terminal has a black paint on it. Okay, it doesn't mean much, but the end of the cap has a number on it. See if you can see that. The genuine Japanese ones have a number, a part number, and all the Nippon ones I found are like that. But these Chinese ones don't. I have actually come across capacitors that I've purchased where the white strip, which represents the negative terminal, was actually halfway. So whoever assembled it in the factory didn't even have the correct orientation of the heat shrink label. Anyway, these capacitors won't go over 200 volts. the original Nippon ones, which I've currently got in this amplifier. There are 8 of them. At the moment I'm forming them, and they've reached around 224 volts. I've still got a bit more work to do on them. So here are some of my figures. This is the first run with the 50k resistor between the transformer and the string of caps, and I'm getting 184 volts. Sorry, around 180 volts across each capacitor. As you can see, it's fairly even all the way along the 8. This is the second run where there's only 25k, and we're now getting 224 to 213, 216 volts. The next phase of this will be to reduce that resistor even further and get to 300 volts, and then eventually the 400 volts, which is or close to the 400, which is their rating. I don't need to go to 400. The power supply sits around 2400 volts, but 8 capacitors in series of 400 volt rating is 3200 volts. So I can take my test voltage up to probably around 350 volts. If I get too close to 400, it may not be that good, but because I don't actually need that rating. But that'll be the last phase of the test. If they pass that test, they're probably alright. So here I've turned the amplifier on. I'm just going to put the probe across the first capacitor. This is 215 volts, and the very last point to test 1729. They're all pretty even as they go along, and you can see here the resistor, 25k resistor, which is dropping the high tension to the string. I have the EHT to the valves disconnected, so it's only the power supply. I don't really want to cause any damage down there if something goes wrong. Here's a view of the voltmeter. I'll just turn it on. You'll see it slowly come up, and it sits at 1700 over here on the scale. Around there somewhere. And if I turn it off, you'll see the discharge time of the resistor string. The original resistors on this amplifier were 25k across each capacitor, and the discharge was quite quick. However, there's quite a lot of heat lost in those resistors, and most amplifier designs these days use around 100 to 200k. So I'm using 150k bleed resistors, but as you can see, the time it takes to discharge is quite a lot longer, so one has to be aware of that. Here is a view of the capacitors mounted on the circuit board underneath the, or in the part of the amplifier. You'll see there is a diode string up there. So there are 8 capacitors there on that circuit board. You can see some of them. A bit of light in there. Here is a view of the equalizing resistors on top. These particular amplifiers don't have much protection. When the capacitor, the original capacitors were sitting there, they're upside down with the terminals facing up, and it was not that difficult to put your hand in there and get plated. There's no interlocks on any of the cases on this particular make of amplifier. So this particular amplifier has had the transformer rebuilt. There it is there. So in the process I've added quite a bit of safety, and I have this plastic shield now that goes over the diodes. I have plenty of warnings over the diodes. There was nothing there, and I have danger signs down here where the 240, and there's a soft start circuit under here which has 240 on it. So I've had to try and improve the safety for my own benefit. So there it is, and so that's the story of the fake electrolytics from eBay sellers. Nowhere near the rating, very poor quality. I would recommend you buy the electrolytics from somewhere else.